This is something I didn't realize the severity of till I was older. My mom had left me and my brother home alone. It was midday. My brother was 12, maybe 13, so I was 9 years old. Watching him play Xbox in our living room, he had his headset on talking to his friends. There was a knock from the door on our carport. I run and answer the door without looking. It's a grown man I've never seen before. We are separated by the screen door, which at the time was unlocked. He asks, "Are your parents home?" Horror washes over me. First of all, he's knocking from the carport, which is strange in and of itself. A stranger would knock on our front door, right? And our carport is empty. We only had one car and my mother had taken it. This man knows that my parents aren't home. I'm afraid. I don't know why, but I am scared. Immediately, my brother in the other room comes to mind. I've never had a father figure. My brother has always been the one who has made me feel safe. The strongest person in the whole world. Someone who could protect me in any situation. How most people regard their father, I think. I feel as though I can barely speak. Wide-eyed, I manage to stutter out, "No, but, big brother here." Without even a moment's pause, this man reaches for the screen door and starts to open it. Like an act of God, divine intervention, an arm reaches out from behind me over my shoulder and grabs the door. My brother pushes past me, holding the door, forcing the man back with his presence, out into the carport, and closes the door behind him. The man tells my brother he was looking to buy some old swing set that was in our front yard at the time. My brother comes back in without saying anything to me, puts on his headset and continues playing. I sit down as well and continue watching him. I don't believe we ever told our mom. Luckily, I never encountered this person again, and it pretty much fades from my memory. But as I got older, it became one of the scariest things that ever happened to me. Right after I dropped out of high school and moved out of my parents' house, I needed work real bad. I'd have done pretty much anything for rent money about that time in my life, so I'm lucky, or unlucky depending on how you look at it, that the local cemetery needed employees. At first, the old-timers who had been working there for 20 or 30 years just wondered why someone so young would ever want to be a gravedigger. It was hard work. Really bad on the lower back, but I soon adjusted, and it turned out to be something more akin to a free gym membership than an actual job. I mean it. I got swole pretty fast. And if I'm honest, it only ever felt like work if the weather was bad or we had an actual funeral on site. Otherwise, it was just nice to be able to spend time outdoors. So the way our cemetery was set up was pretty simple. The majority of the grounds were just regular grave sites, all pretty much the same size and same price. But the northwest corner of the grounds was a private site that contained much larger plots. These were reserved for much wealthier families, and the local undertaker made a lot of cash from selling extravagant grave setups to them. I'm talking whole mausoleums, statues of angels, and stuff like that. We hardly ever visited that area of the site except for cleaning and maintenance duties, and those were never left to me. I didn't take it personally, but the older guys just didn't trust me with all the cleaning chemicals and whatnot that kept the marble and brass fixtures looking fresh, which is why it was so weird when I got a call one of my days off, asking me if I'd been up to that area recently. My boss was livid. I could hear it in his voice, and he pulled no punches when he asked me if I had been screwing around on the northwest plots. Of course, I told him no, that the last time I'd been up there was to watch one of the old-timers using the marble cleaning chemical as part of my training, and that had been months back. He sighed, seemed confused and confounded, so I asked him what exactly the issue was. He replied that it could wait until the next time I was at work. I was worried, sure, but I was pretty sure that I hadn't done anything wrong, not deliberately anyway, and especially nothing that involved the northwest plots. A couple of days later, when I rolled into work, the atmosphere was incredibly tense. I knew something fairly serious had happened. All I knew is that I wouldn't have to badger anyone to find out why. The boss man walked me out to the northwest plot, silent the whole way, and I knew better than to open my mouth until I found out exactly what was going on. There was already a worker up in the plot, tending to one of the graves, and that's when my boss told me that if I'd been hanging around the area, maybe during my lunch break, eating a few snacks among the opulent grave sites, now would be the time to tell him. I swore to God that I hadn't, that I knew better than to eat stuff near the graves, as I'd been well informed it attracts wild animals that can in turn do damage to some of the resting places. And that's when he broke it down for me. Something had tried to dig up one of the freshly dug graves out in the northwest plots. He said something in particular, not someone, because we each had enough experience to recognize when a grave had been dug up by tools or by hand, or, in this case, by claw. It was rough around the edges, obvious claw marks in the dirt as opposed to the straight lines carved out by a shovel. This was something in an emergency, for obvious sanitary reasons, but for sentimental reasons too. If local families discovered that wild animals were trying to dig up their deceased relatives, there would be an uproar. Something had to be done, and quickly. A meeting was called among the gravediggers in attendance. As far as we knew, the mysterious digging had been taking place overnight and was most likely undertaken by some kind of scavenger animal, a coyote, black bear, maybe even an escaped dog. The solution was obvious. Night watchmen would have to be present in the cemetery every night until the situation was resolved. And guess who was voluntold to be the night watchman for the first full week? You guessed it. The young guy. The new guy. Me. The only thing that made the proposal even vaguely attractive was the fact that anyone doing the night work would be paid double the regular rate, and I could definitely have done with the extra cash. First night of being on watch really sucked. All I had for company was a flask of strong coffee and a .22 pellet gun loaned to me by one of the other workers to take down any varmints. It was long, boring, and lonely, but once I adjusted my sleeping pattern, it got a little easier. Then, on the second to last night of my watchman duties, I was on a little foot patrol walking towards the northwest plot with a flashlight in my hand. And that's when I saw it. A flurry of frantic limbs digging at the earth. I could have shouted something, maybe even fired the .22 in the air to scare the animal away, but if I killed whatever critter was causing us so much trouble, I might be out of the extra pay, but at least I'd have my daytime life back. I crept up slowly, turning the flashlight off and sneaking stealthily towards the dark shape working away at the earth. I've hunted rabbits at night with my uncle before, so I figured I'd use the old flashlight technique to cause the animal to freeze for a second so I could take the killing shot. But when I did, when I aimed that powerful flashlight in the direction of the digging thing, I almost cried out in fear. It wasn't an animal at all. It was a human, crouched on all fours, digging away at the earth with his or her bare hands. I couldn't bring myself to aim the rifle. I was too shocked at what I was looking at. So all I did was start making as much noise as possible, telling them to get out of there, saying I'd call the cops if they didn't comply. They complied all right, but not out of fear. The look in that person's eyes was one of fury, pure anger that they'd been interrupted in their obscene little act. I swear if I hadn't had that rifle with me, if I hadn't the means to defend myself, that were obvious to them, I honestly don't know if I'd be here today to tell this story. Needless to say, the other workers didn't believe me in what I saw. Some of them told me they didn't doubt that I'd seen something, that they disputed what that thing was, and I get that, I really do, but still, I don't know what I saw. The police struggled to determine anything other than maybe a few boot footprints, but it really didn't lead to anything else, as that individual ran far, far into the tree line beyond what I was capable of seeing. All I know is that it was definitely a person.